All right, let's get into it. We're going to go over the basics of just student loans, terms and things that you need to be aware of, and just some quicks. I'm going to do like a quick big picture overview, and then I will have breakout videos for the topics in more depth. All right, first things first. When we're talking student loans, you need to understand the difference between federal and private loans. You need to understand the difference between what institution you went to. Is it a public school? Is it a private nonprofit? Or is it a for-profit? You want to know the difference between loan cancellation, loan discharge, and loan forgiveness. The terms are used interchangeably, but there is a difference when it comes to the type of relief that is granted. The other thing we want to talk about is IDR. What are income-driven repayment plans and how does that impact you? Okay, so like I said, we're gonna do big picture this video. Big picture, why you need to understand the difference between federal and private loans. About 7% of students of student loan debt is private student loans. Here's the thing when it comes to private student loans. Private student loans are not eligible for any federal forbearance or loan forgiveness. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that with private loans, if you die, that debt can be passed on to your estate, meaning if you are still a dependent and you die, then your parents inherit that debt, or if you're married, your spouse gets that debt. So another thing to keep in mind, with federal loans, that's not the case. So when most people are talking about student loan forgiveness or student loan cancellation, it is in regards to federal student loans. It does not impact private student loans. You're stuck with those. All right. The next thing we want to move on to, and just another thing, when it comes to student loans, I know everybody's like, oh, it's those young people, it's those millennials. No. About 40% of people who have student loan debt and carrying the most amount are actually the over 40 baby boomers, because most of them still have debt, their student loan debt, and they're carrying debt from their kids who are now college age, where they took out Parent Plus loans. So another thing to consider. All right, and we're going to move on to the next thing. What's the difference between a public school, a private school, and a for-profit school? All right, everyone's probably already familiar with public schools. That's your local community college, that's your city university, that's your state university, that's where you get a deduction because you're an in-state resident. They're typically going to be cheaper. Doesn't mean that the academics is less, but it's going to be cheaper. So technically you shouldn't have to take as much out in terms of loans. Private schools, most private schools are private nonprofits. What does that mean? Your Northwesterns, your Harvards, your Georgetowns, your Dukes, they are private nonprofits, meaning they are tax exempt. So they don't pay taxes. Because of that, they're able to reinvest money into their students, their programming, their research. They get most of their funding. The public schools get their funding mainly from the state and some federal government. Private nonprofits tend to get most of their funding from your tuition. A bigger portion of that is from investments and donations in the form of endowments. Now, let's move on to for-profits. The thing with the for-profits that you guys need to understand. For-profits operate to make a profit. They are for-profit schools, and their students are 50% of all student loan debt default. They are also a huge reason for people getting discharges due to schools being closed. So when I'm talking for-profits, I'm saying ITT, Corinthian, Westwood, DeVry. I'll go into more information about that, but typically the thing with the for-profits is that a for-profit school can cost as much as a private. So you can be paying Northwestern tuition to go to a for-profit where you may or may not get a degree or certificate, and your credits may not transfer. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So when you hear that the Biden administration has discharged $6 million for defrauded students at for-profits, like I said, that's where pay attention to the language. because the discharge for profits, it means it's totally different than loan forgiveness. All right, moving on. Perfect segue. Loan cancellation is not the same as loan discharge, is not the same as loan forgiveness. The reason it matters is because it's the type of relief that you receive. So when people say loan discharge, how can you get your student loans discharged? First way is through income-driven repayment plans. The second way is if you are disabled, you can get a disability, and that's total and permanent disability. You can get a disability discharge. The other way that we are hearing a lot about is, school closed, didn't get a degree, so you get a discharge. Death of a borrower. So if you have federal loans and you die, your debt is discharged, meaning that your family is not responsible. It doesn't pass on to your state. When it comes to loan forgiveness, most of us are aware of loan forgiveness through the teacher loan forgiveness program and the public service loan forgiveness. Those programs are very specific to people who qualify for that. So everyone is not eligible for teacher loan forgiveness. Everyone is not eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So when we talk about loan forgiveness, typically we're talking about those programs. And then there's the loan cancellation. That is what you've been hearing advocates talk about, canceling student debt. That is where nothing has to happen. It just happens. Whereas with the loan discharge, you have to be in repayment or an event has to occur for you to get discharged. Your school has to close. You have to be disabled. Loan forgiveness, it's a specific program that you have to be enrolled in. You have to be a teacher or you have to be a public servant and you've met those qualifications. So when you see the headlines, read a little bit more to make sure it's actually applicable to your situation. All right, moving on. Income-driven repayment plans. What are they? Most of you guys had your exit interviews and it's like in 6 months, you're going to start repayments. There's your standard repayment plan. And then I think there's the graduated. And then the Ed came out with income-driven repayment plans, which was based on your income. So a lot of the reforms, like you're going to hear, you've been probably heard already about Biden reforming IDR. IDR is just an acronym for income-driven repayment plans. So if you've been in an income-driven repayment plan, you want to pay attention because actually the reforms are going to benefit you. More on that later. Moving on to the next overview. So a lot of you were like, hey, you told me personal information. Please don't do that. Just a disclaimer, I am not here to give legal advice or personal finance advice. I cannot individually help people. What my goal is to make sure you have resources so that you can get the assistance that you need. And the other reason to not put any information in the comments or other places, I don't want you to have identity theft or anything like that. So please don't do that. Resources. There are several advocate organizations that are helping student loan borrowers. They are out there. You just need to reach out to them. They do wonderful stuff. One of the main reasons for student loan reform is because of these organizations, because they have been diligently filing lawsuits and all that other stuff to make sure that you get your rights that you deserve. So I will have in one of my articles, it will be a list of resources. Now, is it exhaustive? No, but here's the thing. And I know some of you are like, well, I tried calling other people and they didn't help me. Okay. Here's what you want to do. You need the help. So ask questions and don't get upset if they say that's not what we do, because some of these organizations are geared towards people in the public service loan forgiveness. That's not you, then okay, don't go to that one. Go to the other one that helps all borrowers. And the other thing is, because a lot of these organizations coordinate and work together, maybe they can point you in the right direction. So if they're like, you know what, we don't do that, but we do know this organization does. Also, I'm aware that several of these organizations do webinars, particularly like the CDCC and the Student Borrower Protection Center. They've done webinars on how do you do the loan forgiveness application? How do you apply, get loan forgiveness for Parent Plus loans? So there are resources out there, and there are organizations that can help you. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's use those resources. I will have an article attached to this that you can go to, see the hyperlinks, click on them, go on their website, sign up for the webinars, reach out to them. Thank you, and I hope to see you for the next one. All right, bye.